Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host Alex, and with me I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, look, I'm pretty good. I think the last time I was on, we were aiming for 4 points from the first two games after the break, and we got six. So, um, can't complain there.
Yeah. And if not for a 91st minute goal in this game, we would have been 4 games in a row with four wins in a row, I should say. Which I think I was looking it up. That the last time we did that was under Grant McCann in the championship season. I think, as you said, it was probably just before he got sacked, ironically, by Ojun. But it's been a little while since we've been in this sort of form, which is quite the thing.
Yeah, it's a bit crazy because it's like obviously we love to track the last five and everything. So undefeated in five, and that's all well and good. But then I was looking, and it's only one defeat in the last like 8 games or something. Like the Watford game is the only, and apart from that, it's all draws and wins. So it's actually, w- w- you know, it, it's not like it's a little purple patch. We're actually like extending that form over a pretty, building into an extended sort of period of the season now. So I think um, I think we've just. I think obviously the injuries are the big concern, but I think we've built ourselves into a really solid position. And I think like even just the comments from some of the other managers that are coming out, I think after the Charlton game, what's his name, Nathan Jones?
Jones, yeah.
Yeah, Jones said like he went and congratulated Jurkovic, and like not sarcastically, not ironically, just said, "Hey, for your first season in England, like with what you're doing, you're doing a great job." So I think there's got to be some I guess like a little, I guess, I don't know, pride or something in sort of the way that has sort of all unfolded.
Yeah, and I think to your point around the games since the break with Birmingham and Leicester, to especially in the Leicester game, get the result without McBurney. I think we've been talking all season, and I know I certainly have, and I probably willed it into fruition. Is talking about the fact that we're hoping he doesn't get injured because he's such an integral part to the form that we've shown so far this season. And the Leicester game and now this Charlton game have shown that we do actually have ways of still producing results without McBurney in the side. I can't wait to get him back in because he's still going to be a huge upgrade on the starting 11. But it's showing an ability to sort of, I guess, maybe like a confidence with the players or an understanding with the players of the system that we're playing now, that you can almost slot players into that setup. And we'll talk injuries, and there is going to be a threshold to that. Like if we put out the under 21s, I don't think they'd just suddenly slot into the system and pick up the results. But as it stands, at least, we're missing a huge chunk of that starting 11 and still able to get good results against sides that have been in good form.
Yeah, I think the other thing is I feel like over the last couple of years we've been calling out for um, a manager to show some tactical versatility, to show an understanding of when it's appropriate to stick to your guns and stick to your formation, and when it's appropriate to go, what, we don't really have the players to play that way right now, so we're going to have to change our approach. So it was good to see, we have got quite a few injuries in that sort of forward third, and so interesting to see, I guess, that Jurkovic came out with the sort of the 3-5-2, with sort of I guess, a player less in that forward zone, just and still be able to get a result. I think is the kind of the main takeaway from that. It's not like we just went, we're going to park the bus and try and snatch it. Like we still tried to play, and we still created, I think, far more opportunities than um, Charlton did. Like the game realistically probably should have been put to bed, probably by halftime. Again, it was one of those similar to the Watford game, and we just got lucky that they only were able to score an equaliser so late in this one, that we had created so many really good chances in the first half, and had we been able to put a couple of those away, we probably comfortably cruise into the through the second half. We probably it's all hypotheticals and ifs, buts, and whatever. But like you probably then don't even bother putting Millar on. If you're that far clear, you go, well, he did play a huge amount of minutes the game before. we'll throw someone else on. But even so, I think generally there's just so many positives to take out of not just this game, but I think just the run of fixtures lately, and I guess the general sort of, the togetherness of the squad, or whatever you want to put it down to, that we are still fine, even though we keep we get a player back and then we lose a player. It doesn't seem to be disrupting the sort of the momentum of the side too much.
Yeah, and like I was quite excited to see the back five that we set out with for this game, because as you say, it does show a bit of a tactical flexibility with Jakirovic, which we haven't necessarily seen with managers previously, which I think we've been saying for a while. Like Drame and Giles are almost better in a back five, like as like wing backs rather than as fullbacks. So in a way, it's not even as if the formation hampers us at all. If anything, it potentially unleashes them even more. And we did see, I guess, Giles in this able to get forward, sort of occupying quite advanced positions and getting lots of really good balls into the box. I mean, Ajayi getting on the end of a couple of chances as well. So, as he, I guess, gets more and more used to the style and the system and the game, because I mean, this is essentially only his third or fourth outing in a City shirt. Might start to put some of those chances away. That he's got 2 or 3 really good chances in this one. I think it's almost interesting that, I mean, you were talking before about the fact that it's 1 defeat in 8, and that was against Watford. I sort of look at the 3 games we've lost this season, and fair play, Bristol City sort of. I mean, I say they outplayed us. It was a pretty open game, even that one, where you could argue that we didn't actually look too out of place. We scored early in that one. It's really that Blackburn game where the illness bug went through the camp. Hughes was out injured as well, and so we ended up with McCarthy at centre back, and that was the game where we were really sort of out of our depth. And so you sort of think, to this stage, or at least at the moment, we're still quite strong in our defensive ranks. I think Coyle should be back soon as well, which is a positive. But you do think we're sort of like at that position where any more injuries and we do start to unravel a little bit. But to this point, like it's still looking pretty strong. That midfield's still a pretty strong group. Slater's come into some really strong form as well the last couple of games, and so that's also a big help. And Gelhardt finding the back of the net in 3 games in a row.
Yeah, I think like Crook's coming back, and I know he's going to be out again soon.
Well, maybe not. Apparently, like I was listening to the 1904 Club last night, and apparently he's still happy to keep playing. There's not a suggestion that he actually needs to rush into surgery. So there's actually, I've heard apparently that they're sort of considering just kind of letting him continue to play on until, like, maybe if it gets worse, they'll have to put him in. But
yeah,
it sounds as if they're just going to manage it.
Yeah, right. Because I hope that's the case. I thought they were sort of talking about maybe at the break to try and minimize the number of games that he would miss. So, like, if he went in for surgery at the start of the break, then there's 2 weeks of sort of recovery before everything else. But I mean, it's one of those things where we're waiting on confirmation on a lot of things at the moment. Waiting on confirmation of the extent of Millar's injury. We're waiting on. I guess, I mean, McBurney, it kind of sounds like he's, day by day almost, that he's sort of close, but they don't want to rush him back because of the same, like if they do bring him back too early, then, and he does it again, then he's out for longer. And so I think
it must be so tough balancing it out, because you don't want to rush him back, but it's also, at what point do you start costing points by not playing? Like, so I think they're sort of saying maybe for Portsmouth, maybe for Derby, so only like another week or so, but to your point, like it could be, it just keeps getting pushed out further and further.
Yeah, look, I think it is kind of one of those things. Like, obviously, if we suddenly lose 2 games in a row, then he probably comes back in for sure. But I think if we can keep picking up points, I know it's annoying, and we definitely, as you say, would much rather him be in the 11 and playing the games. But if it's sort of this niggling sort of injury, and you can afford to just get through the next 3 games, which is next week, and get through to the international break, and then he gets 2 weeks of recovery without any issue, then I feel like that's probably worth it in the long run to go, okay, well, we missed 3, he misses, I know it's 3 more games, he missed 3 games, they're not, I mean, obviously it's a championship, anything can happen. But on paper, they're not the
Famous
toughest
last
games that we're
words.
gonna. Yes, I know. I'm aware of this, and I'm cursing us. I'm cursing myself and jinxing us all right now. But on paper, they're not the toughest like set of fixtures that we face. Um, so, and I think like we've done all right without him in
Yeah.
the couple of games without him so far. So, um, if we can manage to sort of keep that longer term view and go, well, if we can make sure he's 100% fit, and then know that we you know quote unquote that we have him for the rest of the season, then I think that's probably a sort of better way of approaching that. But look, that
Yeah.
injury list is a bit crazy at the moment. So I know there's some minor ones that I think are supposed to be back for this weekend, but yeah, hopefully they start coming back and staying fit and on the pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on the pitch, 1-1 draw against Charlton, two sides that were second and third in the form table coming into it. Really looked as if we were going to eke out that fourth win. Great goal from Gelhardt early in the second half. But yeah, I guess overall for the game, what were your thoughts on how City? I mean, you've sort of already touched on the fact that we had quite a few chances first half, could have really gotten out of sight early in the game. Credit to Panda really keeping us in it early in the game with that great save. That's probably the standout moment for me from the start of the game. But yeah, any other call outs from you for the fixture?
Look, I mean it's kind of all the same old. It feels like it's the same old faces that we're calling out for the same things. I think Joseph's work rate was immense. The amount of work he was doing off the ball in pressing and harassing the defenders. I think he's involved in sort of pushing and harassing to sort of win back the ball that Joffy then goes and scores off after we. I think Giles tried to play it through, and it sort of gets intercepted, and they try to play it out, and we sort of press him quickly and win it back, and then he goes, Gelhardt goes and scores a good goal. But I thought Kyle Joseph had a good game again. Like he does like everything right except that he just can't get like a decent finish off, or he can't get like the right touch at that moment that allows him to shoot. Because I think there were moments where he was almost capitalizing on some dodgy back passes or some weak defenders that weren't holding the ball strong enough, and he'd sort of get it around, and then the touch that he'd take when he won it would be too big, and the keeper just picks it up, and just like little things, and you go, I actually feel like I don't think he's going to be a 20 goal a season striker, but I actually think he's so close to turning the corner and actually being I guess like a contributing factor in terms of goals and assists. That I think we just keep persevering, I suppose. Like I think he seemed way more capable than he did last season. I think last season he felt a lot of the time like he was really out of his depth, but I don't see that. I don't get that same feeling about him now. And maybe that is just
especially if the comparison or the alternative is Destan. I'm curious what your thoughts are on potentially Destan starting up top, whether it's against Norwich or whoever. But he's sort of the other, with McBurney out, he's the other option. It feels like Joseph offers more at this stage.
Destan, I think I said in the chat, the only good thing he's in my opinion, the only good thing he's done is the header he's got, or he's did his first touch in a City shirt. But apart from that, he didn't offer much on the weekend when he came on. I think there was a moment that really summed it up for me, where we were trying to play out, and he got the ball, and he was on the touchline, and he couldn't hold it. Like he couldn't hold a defender off for just a couple of seconds to allow, I think it was Giles or someone who was running through to take that ball, and he just couldn't hold it and couldn't shield and didn't show no strength or no patience or whatever on the ball, and just he's frustrating me a lot whenever he sort of comes on at the moment. But I don't know. I mean, when everyone's fit, I think he's probably offers a nice point of difference in attack. Where I think both McBurney and Joseph are very like all action. They want to get involved in stuff. They want to get around, and they sort of. But Destin doesn't seem like he's the same type of player. I'd be interesting to see him like properly in a front two, like if we stay with the 3-5-2, and maybe from the start with, you know, whether it's Joseph or Gelhardt or someone just next to him, whether that sort of brings out a little bit more out of him. But he kind of seems like the guy who needs to be around the box a little bit more and not sort of drifting off. He needs someone else to do all the hard work, the gritty work for him. But he's not really. I'm not really sold on him yet. But look, I think Giles obviously had another really good game. I thought the back three were really good. I think Sammy was probably my standout of the back three because of on top of all his wonderful defensive work. I think, as you sort of alluded to before, was getting involved, getting forward, carrying the ball forward. Dangerous on a couple of set pieces, and so I think it was good to see him sort of seemingly at fitness in full flight, sort of thing. So I think it was one of those games. I think I don't think anyone really had a poor, or none of the starters I don't think really had a poor game. The disappointing thing is things are obviously Miller going down injured because he came on. I thought he was bright. He had a couple of really nice sort of moments where he was made the right run, didn't get the ball, or tried to was going at defenses, and he was a little bit more narrow as well with this, so not out on his wing, sort of more as part of that sort of front two, a little bit more narrow. But just sort of very similar to Baloomies, went for a run, and then sort of the play went the other way, and he just sort of then just sat down and went, "No, I'm done." And they put the physio's on, and he went off, and he unwrapping his wrist and throwing that at the ground, and very, very frustrated. But he walked off unassisted, and it didn't seem like, didn't on TV, it didn't seem like there was a massive limp or anything. So hopefully, my fingers are crossed that it's not too serious, and that maybe just the couple of weeks and a couple of weeks of international break might be about enough. But
I feel like this time of year, it's fortunate with the international breaks because it does kind of give us that extra week of buffer of recovery time for these sorts of things. So yeah, hopefully it's just like a 3 or 4 weeker. The goal that Charlton scored, it's a frustrating one because, and we'll do the votes in a second, but two of the players that I've given votes to, I almost feel like I could deduct votes for their part in the goal, where I feel like Panda, to me, with the cross that led to the corner, comes out to try and claim it and then drops it into the path of the Charlton players. And you sort of think, if you're going to come out as you do, you've got to be catching the ball there or punching it clear, or just don't come out and just leave it for your defence to deal with. Because, I think there's nothing worse than the sight of a keeper sort of trying to catch the ball and then just drops it in amongst all the opposition players. And so that sort of frustrated me a bit. And then Gelhardt, arguably worse or more criminal, with the lack of tracking on the run for Berry before he comes through to score the goal. It's such a frustrating thing that late in the game. And I it's tough because I'm sure the players are so tired. They're so exhausted after the 90 minutes or whatever, that it is sometimes hard to stay 100% focused 100% of the time. And I'm sure he just sort of, saw it coming to the near post and maybe switched off for a second, and that's all it takes. But, I'm sure he's also as frustrated as the rest of us with that sort of switching off from him for the tracking there. But tough goal to take in that sense. I think that when you sort of can pinpoint probably two key areas from our players that lead to it, rather than it being something that they've necessarily earned or deserved in that sense.
Look, the manner in which we conceded that goal was devastating, and which is like strange because we're only like 12 games into the season or whatever. But you're absolutely right. I think like that, despite all the good stuff that Gelhardt did, this was like polar opposite. Like as you say, just did not move, just didn't go with his player at all. And I think it probably is sort of a case of the ball got, he watched the corner come in and went, oh, it's gone near post. This is kind of handled, and then like it gets flicked on, and he's not reacted and stuff. But I guess like it's sort of a thing that at that level, that's not really, at a minimum, he still needs to make sure he's just goal side of his player. Like even if he's like, I don't think it's coming, the minimum you've just got to go, I'm just going to get there. Or position yourself in a spot that you're goal side of, because I don't think he ever really is. He's sort of standing next to him the whole time, or like at the start, sorry. But look, that was really frustrating. But I think, I don't know. Anyway, it was a shit way to end the game. I think is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, I think any game that finishes 1-1, you're going to be frustrated because either it means that you've conceded first and you've had to chase the game and you've like clawed back an equaliser, or you've been leading in the game and you've somehow, you've conceded a goal so that you've lost the lead. So I think 1-1 in a way is almost the most frustrating scoreline. I suppose 2-2 if you're up 2-0 is worse, but the more common outcome being like the 1-1 is quite a frustrating one. So I don't think there's any sort of good way to come out of that. Like, unless you get a last minute equaliser as they did, I suppose they'd be pretty happy with that. But look, I think two sides that are in really good form, still in touching distance of the top six. I think we're just outside the top six on goal difference. Coming into, as you said, and I do agree, that it is quite a bit easier run of games when you're looking at the form table, when you're looking at how the teams are going. And we'll talk Norwich in a second, and I'm sure typical City could rear its head with that one. But we'll do votes for this game first. I might throw to you first for your thoughts on it.
All right. So despite his horror defensive attempt at the end of the game, I've given 3 points to Gelhardt. I've given 2 points to Semi because I thought he had a great game, as I sort of touched on before. Sort of an all-action display from a guy who spent a lot of this early part of the season on the sidelines. So I thought he was great, and I gave a point to Joseph, who I thought just toiled away as he does without a lot of sort of reward. And sometimes I feel like he gets a harsh sort of go from some of the fan base because of the lack of end product. But I think a lot of his work is I guess underrated or undervalued.
Yeah, nice. I mean, I went for the same 3 votes as you with Gelhardt. Despite that lapse at the end of the game, I thought he's really turning into a good alternate option to McBurney when we're looking for goals and games, and his energy levels and everything else are a real credit to him. I gave 2 votes to Giles. I thought, again, a really strong performance from Giles, strong defensively as well as getting forward, offering a lot going forward, getting those balls into the box, which, I mean, I think there was one where he whipped it in so hard that Drame just didn't manage to get to his head to it. I think Drame could do it with a bit of heading training in training sessions, both defensively and offensively. It feels like he just can't get his head to anything when it comes through in the air. But I thought it was a great all-round performance from Giles. I actually gave 1 vote to Panda. Again, it's the other culprit in the goal, but I actually thought that save early in the game, point blank, almost makes up for it. I think that was a really smart save, and for a player that was struggling for confidence and form a few weeks ago, I think he's really starting to turn that around and really show the stronger qualities that he had last season for us. So thought he was deserving of a point there. But we'll talk Norwich and Derby now. Again, it's probably easier talking about these two as a collective, and I'm actually going to be so bold as to say I actually really think that the bar for these 2 games should be 6 points. I think even with our injuries, I think I look at these 2 games and the form that these 2 sides have been in to start the season. Granted, Derby have won their last 2 games. 5 losses in a row for Norwich. I don't think they've got any points at home so far this season. it's the sort of game, I think, where if we were to score the first goal of the match, I think the atmosphere gets really toxic against Manning, assuming he's still in the job by Saturday. But it's even with our injuries, I look at these two games and think, look, if we're able to, knock off Leicester, we're able to get a strong result against Charlton, we really should be looking at these two games and really targeting maximum points.
Yeah, I find it very hard to disagree with what you've suggested there. I think like I'm looking at these and I just go like I can't. Yeah, I think that the expectation is for 6 points from these two games. I think it's like the form that we're in compared to the form that they're in. And I know form's not everything, but no wins in 5 versus 1 loss in 8 sort of suggests that we should be going there and getting the 3 points, as well as I think as you sort of touched on. I guess like it's been nice that, or not nice, but I guess in McBurney's absence that Gelhardt's really stepped up, because I think he's got 3 goals in the last 3. I think he's sort of taken that burden upon himself, and really sort of rising to the occasion despite his little lapse of concentration at the end of the Charlton game. But I think he's looking pretty good at the moment. He seems to be more involved and more direct, and I think more like I guess what we saw at the end of last season. I feel like there was a few games, a little patch where he just didn't seem like he was as energetic as he always or normally is, but he seems to be back to his best. I mean, it'll be interesting to see. We'll probably do the 3-5-2 again just because of the lack of wingers. So probably just trying to think what would be the changes.
You'd almost go the same 11, wouldn't you?
Yeah, so I was like, I don't really know whether there would be any changes.
Because I feel like Slater and Gelhardt in that midfield, even as a 3 with who's it? Hadjmanovic being the third mid, I think is actually reasonably balanced. I feel like the energy from Slater and Gelhardt to win the ball back and feed Joseph and Crooks, if they're the two that sort of play that further forward role, I think is quite a good balance. And then if you've got Drame or Coyle, that's probably maybe the only change would be Coyle if he's fit, if he came in for Drame. But the ball's coming in from Giles and Coyle potentially. I think it's a reasonable setup, I would say.
Yeah, so you're right. Probably looking at unchanged 11. With a team that's picked up lots of points in the last few games. I just don't know where it would go wrong. I know. Like it's one of those things. Like I think on paper, the Norwich they don't have a bad team, but it's just not happening for them. And so I feel like it's the perfect time to play them and just like compound their misery and have it happen to someone else instead of us for once.
Well, apparently, Josh Sargent, who I'd say is probably their most threatening player, was subbed off against, I think it was Swansea they played last weekend, and he was pretty filthy about being subbed off. So you'd like to think that maybe there's also a bit of turmoil there, that he's not going to be completely focused on the game. I think the way that I'd envisage anything unraveling, well, what I would say typically would be that we'd lose a scrappy 1-0 game. But I guess the benefit or the advantage of this City team is it just feels like we score every game. So you're almost having to have the opposition score 2 goals to knock us off. Which is sort of like the opposite of, we used to always concede at least 1 every game, so we'd have to score 2 to win.
Is it only the 2 games that we haven't scored in the 0-0 and the with Coventry and the 3-0 loss to?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
That's pretty crazy to think like.
Yeah. Yeah, so you almost, like in a way, you could almost think that we start games 1-0 up in a sense, because you're saying the opposition have to score 2 goals to get the win. Which I think I think that almost plays in our hands when we're playing these sorts of sides who are struggling for confidence and struggling for goals, that you think if we can get on top early in these games, get the fans on the backs of the managers. So I think Eustace is under pressure as well at Derby. Like that, they've sort of started to turn it around with 2 wins in their last 2, but they've only got 3 wins for the season and they're down in 17th. I know they've got Carlton Morrison from Luton. They've got Brereton Diaz in from, I'm going to say he was either at Southampton or Sheffield United last season. He seems to always play for the red and white striped sides, but like they've got a few good signings in there, but doesn't seem to be working for them either. And I just look at it and I go, look, if we drop points to Norwich, I'd be disappointed. If we drop points to Derby, I'd be disappointed. Maybe you could argue if we get the 3 points against Norwich, I'd be less disappointed if we got a draw with Derby and we just kept that undefeated run going. But yeah, I'd still just say I think we'd go for the 6 points from these two.
Yeah, I think, you know, when we think the episode that was last on, we were looking at the Birmingham and Leicester games, and we were going, you know, if you win one of these and you get a draw out of the other, that's like a really good sort of result. Like we were talking about teams at the opposite ends of the table here. So I think it's very reasonable for us to sit here and say, like, I think we can take 6 points and we should expect 6 points. And I guess like additionally, that's like testament to how much progress Jurkovic has made and this team has made in such a short amount of time, that sense of, you know, belief in the team and belief in like that this isn't a fluke, that, you know, it's not like we won a couple and we've jumped up the table, like that we are content with that we can do this over the course of a 46 game season. I think that's building and growing really nicely. And I think, you know, I think we deserve to be able to sit here and say we should take 6 points from these games.
Yeah, I think that's it, especially because I think there's already people talking, and like, listen, like I've been saying the same thing earlier in the episode, that the number of injuries that we've got could potentially see us start to unravel and fall back down the table. But I think if we were to pick up 6 points from these 2 games with the injuries that we've got, it could start to change that narrative and say, okay, it's actually a good squad of players. It's a good setup. As you were saying as well, if we get through these 2 games, McBurney potentially back for that Portsmouth game, or else the other side of the international break, you go, suddenly we're looking at getting a whole bunch of players back from injury over the next few weeks. I'm sure Bellumi can't be too far off, things like that. You sort of weathered the storm for these couple of weeks, and then, you know, who knows how it looks out the other side of that international break. I think if we were to get 6 points from these 2 games, I'd probably say that Portsmouth game, I think they're probably slightly better form. I'd probably settle for a point there. That I think that would be the toughest of the 3 games still to come. But I think we've put ourselves in a really good position where, you know, there's no need to rush McBurney back at this stage. There's no need to put pressure on Bellumi or anyone else to come back either. We just have to cross our fingers that we don't get any more injuries.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because I think like Akintola had a sore back in the warm up, so that's why he didn't play or wasn't involved against Charlton.
Right.
But like he's fine, and Darla's back. He was going to come on, but then when Millar went off injured, they changed sort of the plan. And so like there's all of these guys who even though they're not our first 11s, guys that have, you know, been out and a back, and I think, you know, even the 3 games in a week, I don't think it's going to test the squad as much as we might think. I guess like someone like Giles, who's sort of playing pretty much every minute. You know, some of those guys might be tested a bit, but I think Famewa, when he's come on, has done a fine job there, and it might just mean a shift becomes a slight shift in shape, and you go back to a back 4 and not play, you know, Famewa as a wing back and just play him as a sort of a left back.
And even Williams now coming into the squad offers an option there.
Yeah, that's true. That's true too. I haven't even thought much about him because most of the conversations around him have been, you know, that they're not looking to rush him back, that he's spent so long out of the game that he needs to, you know, be treated pretty cautiously. You can't just go, well, he was a former Man United player and expect that he's going to come on and, you know, single-handedly carry us up the table or something like, you know, anything silly. So I'd be keen to see him if the opportunity does arise. And maybe you're right, maybe in this busy week that's coming up before the break, it will be when he does get an opportunity, a little bit of time off the bench or something to sort of take the burden off Giles and on that side. But yeah, I think like I don't know. It's just it's a weird feeling. It's been a couple of seasons since I've felt I guess as confident about things as I do right now.
Well,
I feel like it might even be more confident at the moment than when even under Rosina. And I thought we were doing great under Rosina, but it just feels like, you know, some of those things we talked about, the tactical flexibility and sort of, I guess, like the personnel as well, where you go, you know, I actually think we're better off than we were.
And I think part of that as well, and I probably said it earlier in the season, is I think the fact that the parachute clubs are not doing as well. So you don't look at the top of that table and go, oh, well, there's a Leicester and an Ipswich. Well, I guess Ipswich were a promoted side at that point, but, you know, a Southampton and a Leeds. There's no sort of untouchable sides up there. We've already got the draw with Coventry. Yes, we haven't played Middlesbrough yet, so we'll see how that one pans out. Got a draw against Preston. You know, a few of those sides that we've already played, or at least they're not daunting sides. Like if we have a game against Millwall coming up, you go, okay, yep, you know, they're in great form. It'll be an interesting game. But like we just played Charlton, who were the second most informed team in the division over the last 6 games, and looked the better side. So I think to that point, you almost could look at any upcoming game and go, we're a chance here, which does by nature kind of give us that more optimistic outlook than it would have under a senior, where you go, yeah, you know, we're having a good season, but ultimately the best we could hope for is like a 5th place finish and getting knocked out in the playoffs. Whereas now you go, well, it's a wide open season. If we keep stringing this form together, like who knows where it could end up.
Yeah, look, hopefully in a playoff finish at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Or a playoff position. At Wembley, that's where it can finish.
Yeah, well, we've got to have one of the best records at Wembley. I swear I've seen, like, you know, we haven't lost there in normal time, only in extra time, amongst 4 or 5 visits there. So got to have one of the best records there. So yeah, look, here's hoping. We'll see how the season pans out. Hopefully it's 6 points against Norwich and Derby to come over the next 7 days. But until next time, thanks for joining me, Dan.
Not a problem, anytime.
And thanks everyone for listening in. Until next time, come on, City.